We weren't supposed to find the lower levels of St. Mary's Hospital. The official blueprint showed only 8 floors, nothing below ground level. The footage you're about to see was recorded last Tuesday, during what should have been a routine investigation. I entered the main elevator alone while teams set up equipment in the lobby. The panel clearly showed floors 1 through 8, but after pressing the button for the first floor, something impossible happened. The display flashed and settled on B3, a floor that doesn't exist. The doors opened to a pitch-black corridor I'd never seen before. As I stepped out, the emergency lights flickered on, revealing an abandoned operating theater that looked recently used. The whispering grew louder, surrounding me. Then at that moment, the elevator doors slammed shut behind me with no warning. I sprinted back, but it was too late. Security footage later showed the elevator return to the lobby completely empty. My team searched every floor for 3 hours, but couldn't find me. Because according to the hospital plans, I was somewhere that didn't exist. What's even more disturbing is what we found when reviewing this footage later. At 027, watched the corner of the operating room. Someone was already in there with me. Someone in a doctor's coat who never appears again in any of our footage. I remained missing for 6 hours before suddenly reappearing in the hospital chapel with no memory of where I'd been. St. Mary's Hospital has stood abandoned since its sudden closure in 1994. The official story claims financial problems forced its shutdown, but locals tell a different story. These newspaper clippings from 1982 document a series of strange deaths involving the hospital's elevator system. According to maintenance logs we uncovered, there were multiple reports of elevators stopping at non-existent floors, particularly a mysterious B3 level. Hospital staff reported equipment would go missing, only to reappear days later in different locations. The administration dismissed these incidents as mechanical malfunctions, but the reports continued until the hospital's closure. Our investigation began at 11:47 p.m. through the emergency room entrance. Immediately, our equipment detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations centered around the elevator shafts. Pay close attention. This figure in what appears to be a 1970s nurse uniform walks across the hallway and through a solid wall. We followed immediately but found no trace of anyone. The hospital directory clearly shows no basement levels exist in this building, which makes what we discovered in the security office even more disturbing. Inside a locked cabinet, we found this maintenance key clearly labeled B3. According to former staff, this key shouldn't exist. Neither should the faded hospital map we found hidden behind a bulletin board showing an elaborate tunnel system beneath the building. The map bears a strange symbol in the bottom corner, the same symbol we find repeated throughout our investigation. Something was deliberately hidden beneath St. Mary's, and the elevator system seems to be the gateway. The maintenance key led us to a service door hidden behind a disused vending machine in the staff lounge. The door revealed a maintenance corridor not shown on any official blueprint. At the end of this corridor, we discovered a service elevator that, according to building records, shouldn't exist. The moment we approached it, our EMF detectors registered readings 5 times higher than anywhere else in the building. When we pressed the call button, all 3 of our cameras experienced simultaneous interference. The elevator arrived empty, its interior pristine compared to the decaying hospital around it. Despite having no buttons for basement levels when we entered and used the maintenance key, the elevator began descending below the ground floor. The display malfunctioned, flashing random numbers before settling on B3. We've analyzed this footage frame by frame, and you can clearly see a reflection in the elevator's back panel of someone standing behind our team. We were 4 people in that elevator. No one else was present. The descent lasted nearly 3 minutes, far longer than physically possible given the building's known dimension. When the doors finally opened, we found ourselves in a concrete corridor lined with abandoned gurneys and medical equipment. The air was noticeably colder, dropping nearly 20 degrees. As we began exploring, our audio equipment captured a clear voice saying they're bringing more down, though none of us spoke. The voice matches no team member and contains frequencies outside normal human range. Even more disturbing was the simultaneous battery drainage across all our devices. Equipment with full charges suddenly dropped to critical levels within seconds. The corridor stretched far beyond the physical boundaries of the hospital above, leading to a series of rooms that appeared to be patient-holding areas. Each room contained a bed with restraints and monitoring equipment that looked far more modern than the hospital's 1994 closure date would suggest. Some of the monitoring equipment displayed vital signs, though no patients were present. To understand what we discovered, we tracked down Michael Jennings, a former maintenance worker who served at St. Mary's from 1979 to 1992. He requested his face be obscured for this interview. According to Jennings, select staff knew about the basement levels, though they were kept off official records. Only certain doctors had access to B3, he told us. They called it the Special Cases Wing. Patients would be taken down for what they called extended therapies, but many never returned to their regular rooms. Jennings provided his hospital ID badge clearly showing a B3 clearance stamp that hospital administration denied existed. He shared these archival photos of hospital staff from 1985, circling 7 employees who disappeared during their employment. Their personnel files were reportedly purged from hospital records. Most revealing was this original blueprint from 1958, showing the hospital was initially constructed with 3 basement levels before the official plans were modified. Jennings explained the elevator system had been specially designed. Sometimes the elevators would activate on their own, he said. Security would find them stopped at B3 with no one inside. Worse were the reports from night staff that the elevators would arrive at their floor with different interiors than the ones in the building. A newspaper article from 1987 details the beginning of an ethics investigation into St. Mary's experimental treatment programs. An investigation suddenly dropped without explanation. According to Jennings, patient disappearances corresponded with elevator malfunction reports. The official explanation was always that patients had been transferred to other facilities, but no transfer records existed. After a while, staff learned not to ask questions, especially about the elevator. What Jennings told us next connects directly to our experience. Some patients reported being taken to a floor that didn't match the building, with doctors they'd never seen before. When they returned, they'd experienced time discrepancies, thinking they'd been gone for hours when days had passed, or vice versa. After our interview with Jennings, we returned to St. Mary's determined to document the elevator anomalies. We brought additional equipment, including thermal cameras, EVP recorders, and a maintenance keycard reader. Upon entering the main hospital elevator with Jennings' special key, all our recording devices immediately began experiencing interference, static cutting across screens, audio breaking into fragments. Most alarming was the sudden temperature drop inside the elevator car, plummeting 30 degrees in seconds according to our equipment. We conducted an EVP session while the elevator was in motion, asking direct questions about the hidden levels. When we later reviewed the audio, we captured a distinct voice saying, "Don't come looking," though no one had spoken. The elevator's movement became erratic, stopping between floors with lights flickering intermittently. When the doors finally opened, the display showed B3. Despite us pressing no buttons, the corridor before us was in complete darkness, our flashlights barely penetrating a few feet ahead. Our thermal cameras revealed cold spots and human-like shapes moving through the hallway, though nothing was visible to our eyes. The maintenance radio we brought suddenly activated, picking up a frequency broadcasting what sounded like hospital announcements from 1982. Patient names and doctor calls that hadn't been made in decades. Most disturbing was the discrepancy in our footage. When team member Sarah reviewed her camera while still in the corridor, the playback showed rooms and equipment we hadn't encountered, as if her camera had recorded a completely different area than where we had actually been. The metal equipment we carried had become ice cold to touch, and compass readings showed impossible directional variations, as if the normal laws of physics were breaking down around us. Following the cold spots captured on our thermal camera led us deeper into the B3 level, where we discovered a fully equipped operating theater that looked recently used. Surgical tools were meticulously arranged on trays, some appearing to be of unusual design unlike standard medical equipment. A patient clipboard hanging at the foot of the operating table showed an admission date from just last week. Decades after the hospital's closure, we set up a controlled EV session, asking why were patients brought to B3. After several minutes of silence, our audio equipment captured a crystal clear response: to disappear. The voice had an unnatural quality, with frequency analysis later showing components impossible for human vocal cords to produce. As we continued recording, multiple team members simultaneously heard faint crying sounds coming from an adjoining room. We followed the sounds to a small room that appeared to be a children's ward, containing crayon drawings pinned to the wall. The drawings depicted a tall, elongated figure labeled elevator doctor standing beside what appeared to be an elevator shaft. While examining these drawings, our motion detector suddenly triggered, though none of us had moved. The surgical light in the main operating theater activated by itself, captured from 3 different camera angles, confirming no one was near the switch. When team member David approached to turn it off, the light's reflective surface revealed a large handprint appearing in the condensation, significantly larger than any human hand. Most shocking was when a patient monitoring system suddenly activated, displaying an active heartbeat pattern despite being unplugged from any power source. In a records room connected to the operating theater, we discovered dozens of patient files labeled transfer to B4, suggesting an even deeper level beneath us not documented on any plans. The files contained treatment notes describing procedures called dimensional therapy and temporal recalibration alongside patients' symptoms listed as reality, rejection, and dimensional slippage. To gather our thoughts and review our evidence, we returned to the hospital's main building, specifically the chapel on the first floor. Unlike the decaying hospital around it, the chapel appeared unusually well preserved. The wooden pews polished, prayer books neatly arranged, stained glass windows, and as soon as we entered, our audio equipment captured what sounded like a choir singing hymns, though the chapel was completely empty. Our camera work became increasingly disoriented as team members reported feeling a strange shift in gravity, making it difficult to walk in a straight line. When reviewing the footage, we noticed that when viewed through our cameras, a clear figure of a priest could be seen standing at the altar, though nothing was visible to our naked eyes at the time. We placed a static camera on one of the pews and left the chapel briefly to check our equipment. Upon return, the footage showed prayer books opening by themselves when no one was present. A Bible left on the pulpit was discovered open to passages about descending to lower regions and gates between worlds. In the hospital chaplain's office adjacent to the chapel, we found records mentioning elevator rituals used to help transition patients between phases. Team member Michael suddenly felt a distinct touch on his shoulder while standing alone near the altar. When checking his backpack, he found his personal items had been rearranged to form a distinct pattern. Most puzzling was the chapel floor, which showed an unusual wear pattern in the stone, a circular track leading to a seemingly solid wall with no door. When measured, this wall was significantly thicker than other walls in the chapel, suggesting it may conceal something behind it. The chapel's temperature fluctuated wildly during our investigation, with cold spots forming and dissolving in patterns that, when mapped, formed symbols matching those found in the basement level. After gathering substantial evidence from both the chapel and B3 level, we compared the official hospital blueprints with our documented findings. The discrepancies were massive. Entire sections of the building existed that appeared on no official plans. We consulted with architectural engineer Dr. Simmons, who confirmed the building's structural support suggested additional hidden levels not accounted for in public record. Audio analysis of our EVP recordings revealed multiple layers of voices speaking in unison, as many as 12 distinct vocal patterns overlapping when in hand. Using thermal mapping technology throughout the building, we discovered cold spots formed in a precise geometric pattern when plotted on a 3D model, a pattern Dr. Simmons identified as resembling designs used in quantum containment theory. Detailed examination of the elevator mechanism revealed sophisticated modifications that served no apparent purpose for normal hospital operations, including power consumption 3 times higher than necessary for a standard elevator system. Maintenance logs we uncovered describe disturbing incidents where the elevator would sometimes return with different people than those who entered it, and staff reporting the interior of the elevator would occasionally appear completely different upon entering. Security footage from the hospital's final operational years showed the same elevator sometimes having different interior designs when doors opened on different floors. Hospital records revealed that the facility's original purpose wasn't primarily medical, but something called dimensional anomaly containment with patient care as a secondary function. Most disturbing were patient records describing unusual treatments involving dimensional therapy and notations about patients requiring recalibration after exposure. In interviews with former patients, several described experiencing significant time discrepancies while in the hospital, believing they'd been there for days when records showed months of treatment or vice versa. Some reported being treated by doctors who other staff claimed didn't exist. After our evidence analysis, team member Jessica refused to re-enter any elevator in the building after claiming to see a figure standing inside when the doors opened. While the rest of us continued investigating the main building, Jessica remained the first-floor lobby with a static camera. The footage she captured during this solo period contained some of our most compelling evidence. Her camera shows her having what appears to be a conversation with an unseen entity. She later explained she felt compelled to ask questions as if someone was standing directly in front of her. Though she saw no one, the audio captured whispered responses between her questions. More disturbing was the discovery that her personal items, keys, phone, notebook, had been moved from her backpack and arranged in an arrow formation pointing toward the main elevator shaft. When Jessica called us on the radio to report this, we returned to find her visibly shaken. Our night vision cameras captured a distinct figure watching from inside the elevator when the doors opened, though the car appeared empty when we approached. Thermal imaging showed a concentrated cold spot following Jessica through the hallway, always maintaining the same distance behind her. Her personal recording device, left running in her pocket, captured whispers inaudible to human ears repeatedly saying her name and the phrase "come back down." Most convincing was the arrival of an empty elevator carrying Jessica's missing equipment bag, which she had been looking for over an hour, arranged neatly in the center of the car. Jessica noticed her watch running backward when near the elevator, a phenomenon we were able to document with multiple cameras. Strangest of all was footage showing her reflection in a hallway mirror continuing to move for several seconds after she had stopped, as if her reflection was operating independently. As we gathered in the lobby to review this evidence, the elevator arrived without being called, its buttons pressing themselves in a specific sequence captured by all our devices simultaneously. Armed with our maintenance key and convinced something existed beyond the B3 level, we made the decision to override the elevator safety system to access what patient files had referred to as B4. Using the control panel exposed behind a service door, we bypassed the elevator's programming to force a descent below B3. The elevator began descending at normal speed but continued far longer than physically possible, given the building's known dimensions. Nearly 6 minutes of continuous descent. The display panel fluctuated wildly before showing B4. Suddenly, the elevator stopped with violent force, plunging us into complete darkness as all lights failed simultaneously. When emergency lighting activated, we were shocked to find the elevator's interior had completely changed, now appearing as a vintage 1970s hospital elevator with different control panels and wood-paneled walls. When the doors finally opened, we were confronted with a massive underground medical facility that appeared fully operational yet completely abandoned. Lights on, equipment running, but no personnel. Our motion sensors immediately began triggering throughout the facility, though we could see no movement. The scale of this underground complex was impossible, stretching far beyond the physical boundaries of the property above. we discovered a patient holding area containing dozens of hospital beds, all neatly made as if expecting new arrivals. Most disturbing was the records room, which contained patient files with admission dates from next year and beyond. The heart of this facility contained a central operating theater unlike anything in modern medicine, surrounded by observation windows and dominated by another elevator in its center. This one only went down with no up button. As we documented this room, the temperature dropped to near freezing, causing visible breath and frost formation on our camera lenses. All equipment malfunctioned simultaneously. Batteries drained, screens flickered. Audio recording captured multiple voices saying the doctor is coming up. Our watches and phones showed impossible time discrepancies, some indicating hours had passed, others showing time moving backward. Then we heard it, the mechanical sound of the central elevator ascending from below, though no one had called it. Our cameras captured the doors slowly opening to reveal an empty elevator car, containing surgical tools arranged in a precise pattern matching the symbol found throughout our investigation. After escaping back to the surface and analyzing all our evidence, we've developed a comprehensive theory about St. Mary's Hospital. The architectural design of the building creates a specific geometric pattern when viewed from above, a pattern we've identified in historical documents related to theoretical physics research from the 1950s involving dimensional membrane thinning. The hospital's founder, Dr. Maxwell Sheridan, published obscure papers theorizing about thin spots between realities before establishing the facility in 1958. Patient reports we've gathered describe being taken to a floor, then returning to what looked like a different hospital, consistent with movement between dimensional spaces. We discovered the hospital's sudden closure in 1994 was connected to a classified containment failure incident, where, according to redacted government documents, the barrier integrity was compromised. Our evidence suggests St. Mary's was designed to contain and study natural weak points between dimensional realities, with the elevator system engineered as a controlled transport mechanism between these layers. When examining our footage frame by frame, we identified a specific symbol appearing in multiple locations, the same symbol found in Sheridan's papers describing doorways between worlds. Most concerning is the pattern we've documented between dates of reported elevator malfunctions and spikes in unexplained phenomena throughout the region, suggesting whatever was once contained is now moving freely through the elevator system. The most disturbing revelation came when researching previous investigations of St. Mary's, discovering that no research team that has ventured below B3 has ever been fully accounted for. Members of these teams have been reported seen entering elevators in buildings across the city, only to never exit. Our theories suggest the entities once studied at St. Mary's no longer require physical elevator mechanisms to move between dimensions. They've learned to create their own passages using existing elevator shafts as conduits. In the week since our investigation, disturbing patterns have emerged among our team members. Jessica reports her apartment building elevator repeatedly stops at a parking level that doesn't exist according to building plans. Audio recordings from our phones contain bursts of static that, when isolated and enhanced, contain fragments of hospital announcements and call codes. Team member David's home security system captured footage of his elevator doors opening at 3:14 a.m. with no one inside, the exact time we first descended to B3 during our investigation. We've learned St. Mary's Hospital is scheduled for demolition next month, but 3 separate construction crews have refused to enter the building after initial surveys, citing equipment failures and disorientation among workers. When reviewing our final exterior footage of the hospital at night, we discovered all windows simultaneously showed watching figures for 3 frames at precisely 29:15. Figures that vanish when advancing frame by frame. City records show an unusual pattern of missing persons reports within a 2-mile radius of the hospital location, with many last seen entering elevators in surrounding buildings. During our final EVP session conducted in Jessica's apartment, we captured a clear voice stating, "We're coming up to you now." The session interrupted by the distinct sound of her building's elevator arriving at her floor, despite it being 3:33 a.m. with no other tenants active. Most convincing is security camera footage from David's home elevator, showing the display panel briefly showing B3 before returning to normal floor number. Whatever entities exist within the dimensional spaces beneath St. Mary's Hospital, our evidence suggests they're no longer contained to that location. They found pathways through connected elevator systems throughout the city. In next week's investigation, we return to St. Mary's with specialized dimensional field equipment to document what's coming up from below and attempt to seal the passages before demolition crews potentially release whatever remains contained in the lowest levels. Our research suggests the demolition could destroy containment measures still functioning deep beneath the hospital, measures keeping something much worse from rising to our reality.